it isn't the illustrious James Bond, your reputation precedes you. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. How rude of me. Allow myself to introduce myself. I'm Agent Blaze and will be working very closely on this mission. I apologize for the delay. There were complications in Calcutta, but you know what they say. Better late than never. There have been a lot of actors. There have been a lot of video games. And there have been a lot of actors in video games. From Harrison Ford in Raiders of the Lost Ark to Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, if there was a popular movie with a popular actor, you can bet that there would be a video game adaptation. But it was not always guaranteed that you would get both the likeness and the voice of said actor. In the aforementioned Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, we get the most high-fidelity digital clone of Harrison Ford we've ever seen. And though he sounds pretty genuine, it's actually Troy Baker, who is pretty much in every video game. The James Bond films have always been an obvious choice for adaptation, with varying success. This may be a surprise to some of you, but there were James Bond games before GoldenEye. They weren't good, but they did exist. In fact, between 1982 and 2012, there was a Bond game almost every year. As early as 1985, we have Roger Moore in the contemporaneous adaptation of A View to a Kill, and the likeness is uncanny. I think the first time we saw an actor properly represented in a 007 game was The Duel on Sega Genesis in 1993. Then, of course, there was GoldenEye in 1997. Pierce Brosnan sure looks sharp. But there was no way voiceover was happening on the Nintendo 64 in 1997, unless you were Nintendo. We did not actually see a James Bond game that had the likeness and the voice of an actor until 2004's Everything or Nothing, starring Pierce Brosnan. Actually, the game features the voices and faces of many of the same actors from the movie, an impressive feat for 2004. Now, out of the main actors that played Bond, we aren't counting David Niven or George Lazenby because it's not agreed on that those are canon. There was one glaring omission from the video games. We are, of course, talking about Sir Thomas Sean Connery, possibly the most iconic actor who ever lived. God rest his soul.
Suck on it, Trebek.
Definitely still the most iconic and revered James Bond, Connery appeared in the first 5 Bond films from 1962's Dr. No to 1967's You Only Live Twice, then twice more in 1971's Diamonds Are Forever, and finally in 1983's Never Say Never Again. He ties with Roger Moore at 7 films. Seeing as how most of Connery's tenure as Bond happened before the advent of video games, I suppose it makes sense he never appeared in one. He did appear on the cover of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade graphic adventure, and a short in-game sequence. You could say his character Jimmy Malone appears in the Untouchables game, but not Connery's likeness. And he does briefly appear in the load screen for The Hunt for Red October on the Commodore 64, but Connery himself has never really appeared in a game. In the mid-2000s, there was a bit of a fad catching on with old movie properties being adapted into games. Mostly in the wake of Grand Theft Auto and its spin-offs, there were often crime-related and pretty much straight-up clones of GTA, the most high-profile of which were Scarface and The Godfather. Scarface didn't have Al Pacino, but somehow this game...
I may call upon you to do a service for me.
No. This game.
Thank you very much. You're very kind.
No. This game.
What?
This game got Marlon Brando. With 8 Bond games in 4 years, the series was beginning to flounder under publisher Electronic Arts, who bought the 007 rights from Nintendo post-GoldenEye in 1998. There were 3 games based on The World Is Not Enough, and then 3 original games in the Bond universe, all attempting to recapture the magic of GoldenEye. Pierce Brosnan had stepped down from the role in 2002, and during the search for a new Bond, there was a lack of a recognizable leading man to put in the games. And someone in that Electronic Arts boardroom, someone who was already quiet quitting, some absolute legend said, "Why don't we just get Sean Connery?" And just like that, 2005's From Russia with Love, starring Sean Connery, was born. The fact that this game exists is bonkers. Seriously, let's break this down. The movie From Russia with Love came out in 1963 when Connery was 33 years old. The game From Russia with Love came out in 2005 when Connery was 75 years old. There are 2 absolutely bonkers things happening here. I think this may be the longest period of time ever between the release of a movie and the release of its video game counterpart. Well, what about Bram Stoker's Dracula? That story came out in 1897, and they made a ton of games when the movie came out in 1992. Well, yes, but the games were based on the movie, not the novel. This also, by extension, has to be the longest elapsed period of time that an actor has returned to a role. Connery's last canonical James Bond role was in 1971's Diamonds Are Forever, making it 35 years between appearances. I know some of you are already trying to pause the video, so let me do it for you. Hey Google, what was Sean Connery's last Bond movie?
Sean Connery's last James Bond movie was Never Say Never Again, released in 1983.
Yes, you are technically correct.
The best kind of correct.
But 1983's Never Say Never Again was one of only 2 Bond films not made by Eon Productions, which renders them non-canonical. But getting back to the title of this video, From Russia with Love, the movie, was released in 1963. From Russia with Love, the game, was released in 2005. 42 years later. So why From Russia with Love? Why make a game out of this particular Bond film? Out of 25 canon Bond movies, there have only been 5 games that are directly based on the movies. There are a few other in-universe games like James Bond Racing and Nightfire, and sorry, but I'm not including anything released on the British micros because that fly-by-night library is a mess. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I'm just going through some stuff. I love the British micros, the ZX Spectrum, the Specky, the Dragon, the Archimedes, the oh dear God. From Russia with Love is often considered a quintessential Bond film and regularly appears near the top of many ranked lists of the best in the series, usually placing second only to Goldfinger. I couldn't find an exact reason, but my guess is the EA chose this over this because they thought it was more conducive to being a video game. Which is funny because they changed a lot from the movie, and In possibly the most egregious faux pas, they added ingredients that, no matter how they're shaken, really do not stir. If you aren't familiar, 007 movies traditionally have a cold open of sorts, a long prologue sequence of Bond tying up loose ends on some mission, sometimes unrelated to the plot of the film you're watching. The cold open in this case is not the same as the movie. In fact, it's entirely new. Where the movie starts in this tense stealth hedge maze sequence, the game pushes this scene to the second level. Instead, the game opens with a bang. It must have been fun for Bruce Firestein, the writer of the game, to craft an action-packed set piece like this. It's not every day that you get to add something to a legendary 40-year-old movie. Flying a jetpack around Big Ben seems so very on the nose for a Bond movie that I'm surprised it hadn't been done earlier. No, I'm done calling it a rocket belt. It's a jetpack. In this opening, we're introduced to one of two new characters created just for the game. That's right. Not only do we get new scenes and dialogue with Sean Connery, we get Elizabeth Stark, daughter of the Prime Minister, portrayed by Natasha Bedingfield. Yeah, that Natasha Bedingfield. Super popular, multi-platinum pop performer who saw breakout fame in 2004 with her hit Unwritten, a song that, as of today, stands at over 1.5 billion plays on Spotify. Don't spend it all in one place, honey. You gotta remember that we're talking about the mid-2000s here, a time when it wasn't at all uncommon to see celebrities in video games. Fortnite didn't invent it, kids. She also previously performed the song If You're Gonna Jump for GoldenEye Rogue Agent. But wait, there's more. Who else was popular in 2004? Who else can we shoehorn into this reanimated corpse of a game? What further additions would make Ian Fleming spin in his grave? I've got it. Maria Menounos, star of One Tree Hill, E! News, Access Hollywood, and, WrestleMania 28? What a rich, diverse career. Menounos plays Ava Adara, Red Grant's henchwoman. Is that the PC term these days? Henchperson? Now, you might ask, how can you introduce two characters into a game based on a 40-year-old movie? Well, luckily for Natasha Bedingfield's character, Sean Connery was still very much alive to record new lines and make the presence of Elizabeth Stark cohesive within the narrative. Red Grant is portrayed in the movie by the actor Robert Shaw, who you might know from his role in a little late 70s low-budget B-movie called Jaws. Unfortunately, he could not reprise his role for the 2004 game due to a previous commitment of not being alive for 27 years. So instead, we have voice actor Brian Cole taking up the mantle. I hadn't seen the movie in a while before playing the game, so honestly, I had no idea that it wasn't the original audio Shaw recorded in 1963. McCall does a great job. Another noticeable change is the absence of the main series baddies Spectre, who, due to copyright issues, had their name changed to Octopus. So you won't be hearing any references to Dr. No or Ernst Blofeld. "2005 was right at the end of the 6th generation of consoles, and right at the dawn of the 7th. We were starting to see these platforms pushed to their limits with games like Ninja Gaiden, Shadow of the Colossus, and Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay. From Russia with Love isn't the prettiest game for its time, but it's by no means ugly. MGM gave the development team access to their archives to help them really nail the look of 1960s Istanbul, the movie's primary location, and the new areas feel like they fit right in. The standout visually is definitely James Bond himself. I think this is the first time that a real-life actor had been represented this accurately in a video game. take a look at the Spider-Man 2 tie-in game from 2002. We've got plenty of well-known actors, Tobey Maguire, James Franco, and Willem Dafoe. We've got the Charlie's Angels game from 2003, based on the movie starring Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and Lucy Liu. Compared to a lot of games from the same generation, Sean Connery looks really good. And getting real people into games was not like it is today, where you sit down in a 3D face scanner and a minute later, you have a digital clone. And even if they did have that tech back then, Sean Connery had aged quite a bit since the original film, so that wouldn't have worked. The developers, EA Redwood Shores, had to create the legendary actor polygon by polygon from referencing the huge archives of Bond materials in MGM's vaults. And Sean Connery wasn't the only one. There's Robert Shaw as Donald Red Grant, Desmond Llewellyn as Major Boothroyd, aka Q, Daniela Bianchi as Tatiana Daniela Bianchi as Tatiana Romanova, Lotte Lenya as Rosa Kreb, Pedro Armendariz as Ali Karim Bey, Bernard Lee as M, and Lois Maxwell as Miss Moneypenny. It's really neat to see so many actors who were long past in 2005 live on as digital avatars. However, most of those avatars only live on in likeness and not voice. Sean Connery outlived almost all of the supporting cast. So really, all of the actors had to be recast. I had actually figured that they just ripped the dialogue from the movie to use in the game. I guess that means that the new voice actors did a great job. The soundtrack is also entirely new, though obviously inspired by the film score. Composer Christopher Lenertz of Medal of Honor fame worked with Vic Flick, the guy responsible for the now iconic James Bond guitar riff, to craft a thoughtful and reactive tribute to the early years of 007 films. Fun fact, Vic Flick, besides having the best name ever, worked with some big names back in the day, such as Tom Jones, the Bee Gees, and John Williams. If you've played a mid-2000s third-person movie tie-in game, then you know what to expect in From Russia with Love. Left trigger locks on, right trigger fires, there's a general action button that jumps, climbs, and vaults, and a button to take cover behind a wall or low barrier a la Metal Gear Solid. Crouching silences your steps, which allows you to sneak up for stealth kills. Then there's Bond Focus Mode. While locked on, you can activate this precision aiming mode to zero in on your enemy's most vulnerable areas. You'll need this to take down armored enemies as well as some of the more robust brutes that occasionally show up. Of course, you have a classic Bond arsenal at your disposal. You've got a Magnum, submachine gun, shotguns, rifles, scopes, an anti-tank rifle, and no self-respecting 00 agent would be caught dead without the standard issue Walther PPK-7 silenced, of course. And what would a Bond game be without gadgets? Q.
Blaze, there you are. Now then, before you charge off into chaos again, please pay attention. Q Branch has prepared a few, shall we say, field-tested refinements for your next assignment. Try not to destroy them all within the first 10 minutes. First of all, we have the laser wristwatch, precise enough to cut steel, subtle enough to open any locked door. The repelling gun, when quickest way out is straight down. The serum gun, confusion in a capsule. One shot and your enemies start fighting each other. And the gas mask, simple, effective, and best worn before the room starts spinning.
Ooh, shiny.
Innovation, Blaze, not toys. Try to remember that this time.
Q, I'm hurt. I always bring back your lovely gadgets. Except the Q armor. I wasn't sure you liked Swiss cheese. And really, the briefcase turret just wasn't your style.
Do try to pay attention. This is the Q-copter, a miniature radio-controlled helicopter straight from the mines of Q Branch. It can scout ahead, gather intelligence, and when absolutely necessary, deliver a rather explosive farewell.
It can also maneuver through areas that Bond's svelte, glistening physique could never dream of penetrating.
Stop now, Blaze, please. Handle it carefully, Blaze. It's a tool of innovation, not a toy. And for heaven's sake, try to bring it back in one piece. Blaze? Blaze? Agent Blaze?
The Q-copter really opens up the game design and turns a mostly mindless stealth shooter into something with a little more substance. You'll often find maze-like air ducts to send the Q-copter through, with the objective of blowing up a switch that will open a previously inaccessible door. Another way From Russia with Love spices things up is the ability to upgrade your weapons and gadgets with research points that you can find hidden around each level, as well as inside attaché cases that you unlock with a matching minigame. For weapons, these upgrades are pretty standard with the likes of ammo capacity, rate of fire, and power. Gadgets are a little more unique, and the upgrades tend to give you more uses, longer duration, etc. I highly recommend that you max out the Q armor as quickly as possible. Remember, the longer you stay alive, the more sexy parties Sean Connery can attend. The one area where EA Redwood really dropped the ball is the driving sections, which is a shame because the Aston Martin DB5 is such an iconic part of early Bond films. The controls here are so twitchy and the AI of the enemy vehicles rubber bands so much. My least favorite part of the game is the first half of Level 3 Istanbul. You have to take out 35 cars in 10 minutes. The aforementioned sensitive driving controls, combined with often being either absolutely bombarded with enemies or not being able to find them at all, makes for a frustrating affair. Didn't care for Level 3? Well, have a Level 5. Or a Level 10. I feel like so many Bond games tried to make driving levels a thing during this era. They even made an entire game out of this concept, and trust me, it's just as bad, if not worse, than the driving here. You know what the best Bond game of all time didn't have? Driving levels. Okay, sure, there were 2 tank levels, but those aren't nearly the same thing. So what did gaming journalists think of From Russia with Love upon its release in 2005? To divulge that top secret information, let me ping an expert in gathering intel. Agent Yahel, are you there? Come in, Agent Yahel.
It all makes for an action game kinda like your typical Bond girl. Fun to look at, but shallow. With simple mission objectives, cinch puzzles, and auto-aim that you can tweak for more skillful shots if you like, this game practically plays itself. While a faithful adaptation of the classic action film into a game sounds good at first, you soon discover how ruthlessly linear it is. I couldn't shake that stuck-on-rails feeling. Love is a decent Bond game with the best Bond, but it pales in comparison to the previous, much superior Bond game that featured a not the best Bond. On the whole, From Russia with Love is an average third-person shooter plagued by many control issues common in the genre with some cool Bond-related aspects. The driving, shooting, and gadgets are all fun, but none of them capture the feel of a full James Bond production as well as everything or nothing.
Thank you, Agent Yahel. Your intel was invaluable. In a bit of a rarity for this channel, I had never played From Russia with Love before making this video. This was a completely fresh playthrough without the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia to sway my opinion. But it's also unfair to review a game from 2005 like it came out in 2025. I think From Russia with Love is a very of-its-time third-person licensed action game that is elevated to slightly above average by the property it's based on and the pedigree of its leading man. The absolute novelty of controlling a digital Sean Connery in what is arguably his most famous role is what drew me to this game. Not to mention, a video game adaptation releasing 40 years after the movie is almost unheard of. The fact that From Russia with Love exists is wild to me. The game itself is okay, but everything else about it, the development, the music, the casting, is endlessly fascinating to me. Recently, a completely new Bond game, 007 First Light, was announced, and instead of going along with the tried and true first-person shooter treatment, it looks like IO Interactive is going with a third-person action-adventure much like From Russia with Love. But really, as the developer of the Bond-adjacent Hitman series, that was to be expected, and welcome. Looking at the trailer gives me Uncharted vibes, which is exactly what this license needs. Arriving sometime in 2026, it will be interesting to see if First Light captures the spirit of the 007 franchise while making fresh an over 70-year-old franchise. Let's hope that, when it finally arrives, it leaves us both shaken and stirred. This is Agent Blaze signing off. This message will self-destruct in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Where's the boom? I was told there would be a boom. Q. Where's the boom? Where's the boom? What's wrong with this thing? Where's the boom? Hello? Hello? Boom? 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 All right, I guess. A special thanks to Wrestling with Gaming for not just lending his voice for the reviews section of this video, but also for his motivational words to a new creator who really needed to hear them. I can't thank you enough, Yahel. Another special thanks to Tom, my short-term GameStop manager and long-term friend, for lending his talents for the voice of Q. Yet another special thanks to Jessica Philback from Studio 360 Maine for the use of her amazing space and equipment. You have always believed in me, my talents, and my crazy ideas. You can find links to her photography services and studio rentals below. Oh, and I have a Patreon. Again, it's like $3 a month. There's like bloopers and assets and other stuff. So, you know, go buy me a coffee, maybe.